Hi, Michelle. Welcome to Activating Magic. I'm so excited you're here.
It's so good to see you. I'm excited.
It's been so long since I've seen your face in the flesh, and we've known each other for almost a decade, I think. And
It
you
has been.
are like just on fire with your new book and everything. So, interesting. Hold on. So let's start with tell us a little bit about how you got into the world of coaching because you started as a healer. So let's hear about that.
I did. I actually first took a really traditional route as a therapist. I knew I was a helper and healer and I wanted to help people. And I had been doing that some in my personal life. So I went to graduate school and became a therapist. But then once I started learning about some of the alternatives, some of the intuitive and healing arts, I couldn't do that work under my license. And I said, I don't know how this is going to work. I'm going to get rid of my license. And I opened a local healing center and I was in with the energy medicine and the intuitive and healing arts. And then I found the coaching world and I loved it because it's the best umbrella that then you can just do all your magic under that coaching umbrella and your clients show up, then you give them whatever medicine within you that they want and need.
I love that journey and you make it sound so like easy. How did the intuitive and healing arts like come to you? What was that, as you're a therapist, how did you start to learn that?
I love how you say that because yeah, on the other end of it, you can say, but it was a deep dive into spirituality after a series of life happenings. I was in a very early toxic marriage, married to a drug addict, had to leave that marriage with a 2-year old and then become a single mother, went on to remarry and have other children. But just dealing with all that abuse, addiction, I have that in my family, generational trauma. And so I had a really early spiritual awakening because of that. But then, you get busy. I remarried, I had 2 more children, I was just working and doing my thing, but it would always come back around. And I finally realized that I'm sensitive to energy, that I've always been an empath. And when we made this big move and I decided, Spirit was saying, open a healing center. And I said, I don't know what I would do with that, but I found a development circle and I started sitting in it and learning more about my intuition and my spiritual gifts. And it really opened that up. And then when I went to do healing on people, my psychic gifts opened up. And so then I said, I got to learn what all this energy is and what to do with it.
Mm. So anything you want to share about your early spiritual awakening? Like what were the seeds that were planted at that time?
The seeds were, I just woke up. I was 25 years old and I started realizing I didn't like any area of my life and I was in crisis. I was in that toxic marriage. I got married at 20. And then as things happened, my best friend was dying. And that kind of put me in that what happens? We're here, we are young. What happens when you die? And it was the perfect intersection of responding to coming out of that toxic marriage, which I decided to leave, and then helping my best friend with that journey of dying. It ended up being AIDS. So then we went into the whole AIDS crisis. But this was when we didn't even know what AIDS was yet. And I started working with him and others who had AIDS. And so hospice work and hospital work. And that's how I really found Louise Hay and the energy work. And that's how I changed the trajectory of my life. So it was my own
Wow.
questioning. He ended up passing away before we were 30 years old. And that was just so young.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That would be a wake up. Yeah. So you said you found Louise Hay. Were you already a therapist?
At that time, no, I was in advertising and marketing. I have a bachelor's degree in advertising and I was working in publishing. And then all of a sudden, when I moved to San Antonio for a short time to help my friend, and then I never went home and I came out of that marriage. But there were people doing Louise Hay healing circles and they were using it with chronic illness and with the AIDS patients. And the first time I went into that, I felt that energy. And I also got
Mm.
exposed to other church experiences because I'm very drawn to the spiritual. I grew up in organized religion and I even was an adult teaching and preaching and all of that. And then it just no longer fit.
Hmm. Oh, wow. So you moved to support your friend and you just never went back.
I said, I'm going to come and see what's going on. I brought my son and I knew that I had to put distance. I was in a very codependent, toxic marriage and I had been with him since I was 14. So I knew I needed to put distance. So I went to San Antonio from Dallas. And then it just called to me. A lot of people end up in San Antonio for healing, I found. And here's how the universe is so funny. I was in desktop publishing, advertising, PR, and somebody opened a metaphysical spiritual center and they hired me to make all the promotional materials for the healers and psychics.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how I was exposed to it. Then they became my teachers and healers. So there are no accidents and no coincidences.
Wow.
There I
That's
was writing
epic.
PR flyers for psychics and mediums and healers.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense how you do what you do now.
Yes.
Um, I've worked with therapists while they were making the decision to let go of their license. You probably have too.
Yes.
Um, Anything you want to share about how you decided to have the courage to let it go? Because, depending on the state and everything, you have to literally walk away in order to move into coaching or the healing arts.
You really do. It was a very strong calling for me. And as I said, I was feeling like I need to open this healing center. I kept seeing a little house, and I ended up renting a little house that fell in my lap, which became Hope House. But it is scary because your mind wants to say, what are you doing? I kept saying, how am I seeing clients without a license? Like my mind could not
Mm.
even wrap around that. And my business ended up being on the massage table, hands-on healing, because I started having people show up in my world and I was drawn to learning it. And I made that leap because I really listened to spirit. I think what
Mhm.
helped though is we had made a move from Colorado to Texas, and it was a gap there. And I would have had to finish whatever Texas required, which was more than Colorado. So Spirit made it
Ah,
enticing to just stop that and do this new thing.
wow. So Hope House, bring us into that world. I know when I met you, you were transitioning out of Hope House and into coaching. Was it all like divinely guided and successful, or how did that go?
It was very divinely guided. So again, my mind said, I can't even rent an office. How am I renting a whole house? And then a house fell in my lap. And so I literally opened the doors. I was afraid to put a sign in the yard because I didn't know what I was doing. But then women just started coming and I started learning the healing arts. And I sat in a development circle and it was all very divinely led. And then I found the coaching world and I found that I loved coaching. And I started moving from when people get off that massage table after a healing session, I want to help them so they don't just wait till they end up back in crisis on the table again. There's got to be something there, and found the whole coaching world and where that intersected. And that's kind of how it was all my entire business. It's been 16 years now. It has taken so many turns. And if I
Mhm.
sum it all up, it's that I learned how to live my spiritual journey and then turn around and share it with others. And I don't even always know where it's going.
Well, So my business I operate under now is called Sourced. And, really the premise is we don't know. We know our next step, right? Like the more tapped in we are, the less we need to know about the big picture and how we're going to be used, and instead just to trust the next
That is
step.
gold right there, because the more I learned to do that. Now, you said, was it just a success off the bat? After 18 months, it was a very expensive hobby. I created financial disaster for my family and I had to close the doors. But by then, I said, I'm not going to not pursue this. I hired my first business coach and I found the world of coaching and I kept going, and I had to learn. A lot of healers have the broke healer syndrome, and I had to learn. And what I loved then, the business that evolved from that, was partly how do you take that coaching model and teach it to healers and
Right.
practitioners? And that's what I started doing, because then people saw, wait, she's not broke anymore. She's making money and she's getting to do her life's work. When my community, locally and globally, said, no one will pay for that, you should be giving it away, why are you
Right.
taking money from people? I had to work through all of that. And I came to you at one point to work on my money and business stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I'm guessing people don't say that anymore. Why are you taking money for that? Right? It's like a reflection of our consciousness and what we need to work through.
It is, but there are a lot of people who still believe that healers and helpers should give that away for free. But I believe all gifts are spiritual gifts. There's still a lot about charging for your gifts. But, at the same time, I had to develop those gifts. I put a lot into it.
Yes. Well, let's talk about your gifts. So I've heard you mention going to the spiritual circle and or like taking energy healing training and feeling the energy in the room. Um, how do you experience that? We'll start there because then you also mentioned your psychic gifts coming online, so we'll go there next. But I have a quiz and a framework of different types of sourced magic or
Yes.
ways the divine works with and through us. And I'm hearing, vibration magic, compassion magic. So I just want to hear how you experience it.
Very much vibration and frequency, and then all the teachings around that law of attraction, universal law. I am very sensitive to energy, but when you're that way, you just think everybody processes that way until you learn they don't. So I realized I can read energy and move energy and manage energy. And when I was still a therapist, things would come through me and out of my mouth that I knew weren't coming through my mind. And that was my first example of kind of, I'm channeling this. And
Yes.
so I was aware, I started doing the energy work. I could feel the energy moving, and people were saying they were getting results from it. And then when I started touching people, I started having psychic visions. But at first, I was saying, I am not saying that. That's crazy. And so I sought out, I sat in a development circle every Friday night for 3 years,
Mm.
working on those gifts and being in community and building and growing my business and plugging into that. And then along with that came mediumistic gifts started opening up. And for whatever reason, I was always saying, I'm a healer and I'm a psychic, but I am not being a medium. Yet I had medium gifts and I said no to them for a very long
Mm.
time. And I focused on the healing and the psychic. So the transition to coaching, which you can understand, I kept saying, well, I don't need an hour with my clients on a table off on their own journey. I can sit them in front of me and I can intuitively coach, is how I understood it. So I got an office and I practiced being open eyed, and they're open eyed sitting across from me and coaching them using the same energy and the
Mm.
same psychic gifts. And it works.
Mm. I love that. Well, so that when things start coming out of your mouth that aren't yours, and I'm thinking of you being a therapist and the rules and the whatever about that, did that freak you out?
It did at first. I was getting messages and I wasn't sure if I was hearing things out loud, and then I'd say them back and the people would look startled. I worked in a psychiatric hospital for a time in Colorado, and we were an emergency unit and we would do intakes and all of that. And we got all the suicides that didn't work. So we were the first people when they came back to life, we got them. And there was something about that that was really activating it. But
Yeah.
while I worked in the psychiatric unit, I got very sick. This was my wake up call. I got very sick because I would walk in wide open, and my reputation was go stand by the violent and agitated patients because somehow you calm them down. But I didn't know what
Mm,
to do with me, and I got very sick. And that's when I said, I need to understand what this energy is.
yeah. Wow. One of the things I'm hearing a lot is that I call it integration, right? There's the transformation, the shifting of the energy, which you did unconsciously there, and
Yes.
maybe taking it on. And you did consciously when you had people on the table, but then there's integrating it. And so I'm hearing that you're really passionate about people actually taking this out in their life and using it, not just
Yes,
like the
very
temporary
much.
fix.
I started really seeing that even when I was working as a therapist, people would come back for a long period of time and dig into stuff. But I really have a passion to help people move forward, and taking inspired action is so key. I wanted people to start understanding for themselves the habits and patterns. You can get on my table, but the minute you get off and you go home, you're back in your toxic environment with your thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships, and your environment, all of it. And I
Yeah.
wanted to teach them how they had to shift that to create lasting change.
Mm, yeah. I I feel drawn to ask about your book and how that, you know, I know it just came out recently, and how does that help people actually make lasting change? So loving what's next, and we're going to share about the gift that you have for helping people get what they want. Um, Talk a little bit about how this book is supportive of people who want to have inspired action.
This book launched October 1st, and I'm really excited about it because now I've been coaching for 16 years. I've grown and evolved and done the work, and I have enough clients that I've taken through processes. You know, a lot of what we do, like you're saying, it's our own magic. And so when all of a sudden you have to put it into words, it took me time to say, because I used to just say, I'm just doing what I do and I don't know what it is. But you have to learn to say what it is. So in this book, they really wanted me to write a book where I take people through the whole process. If I'm working with you over 90 days or 6 months. So tools, exercises, and processes. And something I'll say about the book, it takes you back first to learning to tap into and trust your own desires. It's what you want can be yours now is the subtitle of Loving What's Next. And it's you can have everything you want now, but you've got to clear, heal, and resolve what shows up that's in the way. And you've got to know what you actually need, want, and desire, and work from there. And so it takes people through that whole process over a period of time. People have really lost touch with what they desire versus what
Totally.
everybody else desires for them, what people think you should want, and all the things you think you need. People think they can't have their desires until they've taken care of their basic needs. That's not always the way it works best.
So true. It's been such a journey for me to know what I want.
Yes.
And even, when we connected, I mean, I was very much deep in study of the laws of the universe and, where the desire is present, the way is present. And I it's been a lifetime study of how do I know what I want, actually,
You
right?
hit on one of my biggest mantras: wherever there is a desire, a way has already been made. Now I will tell you, I believe that 100%. I had to go through some stuff, but now that I believe it, it does make it quicker and easier to manifest,
Mhm.
because now it's for me to open and see the way, and I know the way is always there.
Do you think, I think sometimes we approach desire or what we really want as this grandiose big picture, like, I'm bi-coastal and I've got the beach house and the mountain house and the, team that operates flawlessly and $1 million in the bank. And for me, I have found that my desires are much more nuanced and like immediate, right? Versus like, oh, I really want to build to this thing someday that's so grand that I can't embrace it. What's your take on that?
I love that you're saying that, because it used to be, and it's still a tool, your whole desire vision. But then people get stuck in, until I have all of it, I can't have joy. And joy is the highest vibration to manifest from. So you're very right. I started getting aware of little desires. And as Abraham says, sending those rockets of desire out, and those small desires coming in. And then you all of a sudden go, look, now I have a lot of the pieces of it and the whole thing of it. And you actually taught me back when I was working with you, and it was pivotal. You said when we get into transformation, we can get really hooked on it's big. And I'd always be ready, like, I want that big, send me to the ground on my knees, break my whole life open. And you said when you get to a certain point, the transformations are much more nuanced. And so I started recognizing
Mm,
that, and it shifted everything for me. And so
mm,
it's very true. We're waiting for that trumpet in the sky and the burning bush. And we need
yes.
to be paying attention that your desires will start coming in, and you don't need every transformation to rock you to the ground. That's stuff you can learn not to have. Now I don't have to go to my knees every time and hit the ground.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I've had a lot of those big ones still. But I think about, what like desires that are alive for me right now, going to the hot springs at noon on a Tuesday, and like
Yes.
just unplugging and soaking in the deliciousness and simple things.
And then that gives you joy, and then that
Mm.
amplifies in your body and your life and creates more joy. And then your others' desires come in. And I believe the universe never forgets your desires. So the more I open to all of it, desires I've had for years start popping in.
Ooh, say that again. The universe never
The
forgets your
universe never
desires.
forgets your desires. So once I really got in the flow there, and I'm open to all the desires that
Ooh.
were not something that I even need right now or at the top of the list, they start showing up and coming in
Do you have an
because you're
example of
open to
that?
them.
Do you have an example of like,
I
oh,
do.
this
There
just
was a
popped
time
in and
just
I
a
forgot I even wanted that?
yeah, just a few years ago, I got in this place where I was so aligned and I was creating everything. And I had this period of time where all these random desires, and one of them came out of nowhere. I always wanted to ride in Mardi Gras on a float, on a big float in the parade. I could smell the food, I could smell the streets, I could throw the beads, I could see it all. And an opportunity came out of nowhere. So people told me it costs thousands of dollars, you're on a wait list for years, on and on. And I just said, well, I just know I desire it. And I rode in the Mardi Gras parade on one of the
That's
biggest
amazing.
floats. And it was one of those desires that showed me, once you open to it, spirit remembers all your desires.
So good. I love that. I love New Orleans.
Yes.
Okay, question. So you talked about being a therapist and words would come through and they're not yours. And in my framework, I call that expression magic, the channeling, whether it's words and advice or it's music or movement
Yes.
or art. Um, I would love to get your perspective on your psychic gifts compared to your mediumship gifts. And, I have a holding of the difference between those, but I'm guessing not everybody listening does. And then, yeah, just tell me a little bit more about how you embraced mediumship. I know you went down that path and you were really specifically helping a lot of mediums to build their business. What was
Because
that experience like?
I
Yeah.
respond to spirit so much after saying no for 10 years. A friend invited me to come out to LA to this workshop she had put together, a woman I'd never heard of, and I went. And I kept thinking, I don't need to go to this. I'm really busy. But I went, and the woman stood up in front of me, and something inside me happened. It was like, that is my teacher, and I'm supposed to do mediumship now. So here I am, busy in my business, but I believe whatever spirit calls me to do is part of it. And I responded, and I started developing my mediumship. And then I caught the attention of some really big mediums who started sending all their clients to me and their students because I knew how to help mediums make money. And that was a big problem. My business exploded. And up until COVID, I was training because I'm already a speaker. You and I both know each other from the speaking world and speaking training world. I was already learning to be a stage speaker and being one. So I was getting on the platform doing mediumship, and then COVID hit. But meanwhile, I became the spiritual business coach for mediums. I was doing mediumship, and mediumship and psychic are two different frequencies. And psychic is much easier for me. It is reading into your soul and your aura and telling about the energy there, backwards, forwards, and now, where mediumship is reading into the other world and letting spirit orchestrate messages from your people who've passed. So you can go in and out of both. Mediumship for me took a lot more training and concentration, where some of the people I know, some of my friends are some of the best mediums in the world now. For them, it's so natural. So you can have healing, psychic, and mediumship gifts and have them in different ways so that
Mhm.
not all of them are as easy for you as others. But I did spend different times developing all of them.
So you don't miss it being on stage in a mediumship role?
It was really fun, and I was doing a lot of mediumship. And then, as I said, COVID came along. I just had my first, with two other mediums, sold out show, and we had been invited back to do another one. And then everything shut down. And in 2020 and 2021, my coaching business grew. I had the biggest money months of my life, and it grew. And then I was asked to write the book, and it started going in that direction. But at the same time, I see all the reasons following the mediumship. One, I helped a lot of people during that time because I also help my clients write their books. I've helped so many mediums write their books because
Mm.
every medium needs a book. So I still brought whatever gifts I had. And the other was even speaking on stage like you and I do. Getting on a stage and doing mediumship is the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. And
Mm.
it never stops being terrifying. And I needed a new terrifying thing to do so I could trust spirit even more, because I've
Mm.
never had to trust spirit that much in my life. Because
Wow.
even if you're doing, like, you get on a stage and you do psychic, you may or may not be 100% right. But when you're doing mediumship, they're going to say yes or no. You're either getting a
Mm.
person showing up or not. So I know all the ways that it grew me and shaped me, and I'm still involved in it, and it's a passion project now.
Mm. That's so fascinating. So it's like, I feel like it's really valuable to underline because, I work with so many people who are kind of having new magic come online. And I'm in a stage of new magic coming online. And I've been in this stage at one point before. And it's like so terrifying to think, does this work? Like, do I trust it? Do I tell people about it? Do I just like keep it on the down low? Um, and then I think giving ourselves permission to try something new, but also to not be stuck with it.
It's
So,
all of that. There was a time I really played around a lot with intuitive and intuition when I knew I was a psychic. I've always been a
mhm.
psychic. It's a very strong gift for me. Then with mediumship, it's like you said, here, mediums want to hire me as their coach. And I'm going, am I going to tell people I'm a medium? And what do I say out in the world and all of that? So I love how you're saying different gifts come to the forefront and come and go, and spirit is using you all the time. What I found with mediumship is I can do it, but there are people who are amazing at it all the time, and they're doing it. And what I'm meant to be doing is to be coaching, speaking, writing these books and
Yeah.
talking to people about this. And it wasn't happening in the readings. I gave 100 readings. One of my mentors told me, give 100 readings so you can get better at it. So I went out and did it. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be giving readings.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Well,
But it developed me.
well, I have a hot button about readings, which I do get sometimes, but like, integration is where it's at, right? So if you just get a reading, you may or may not, like the person may or may not do anything with that in their life. And you're so committed to people having what they want in their life that I could see that that model wouldn't align for you.
And you just hit on it. I taught so many of my medium and psychic friends how to use the coaching model to coach people that kept coming back for more readings. They didn't need another reading,
Right.
they needed the ongoing coaching, and it works
Yes.
beautifully.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, because most likely the reading went in one ear and out the other, or we still need to work with that awareness before we ask for another one.
They have to unpack it over time.
Mhm.
So, coaching and the readings work really
Yes,
well together.
so good. So I love the way you framed that, though, that this was so terrifying because, like, it's either going to happen or not, and you're totally in surrender.
You're on a stage and you don't know unless you know and trust that spirit will always be there. I used to be afraid, what if nobody shows up? And then one of my mentors, see, I hire coaches and mentors for
Yeah.
everything. And they told me, spirit's always there. It's you. If you look, they're going to show up. But every time you're in front of an audience on a stage, and it takes a lot of trust and surrender. And you actually can't do a mediumship reading until you surrender your voice and you surrender.
Mm,
Your mind has to go to the side to let that spirit message through. But you're afraid to. Because what if nothing comes out, or what if it's wrong? But you know what? It never didn't show up.
never.
Never.
No person had like stubborn ancestors that didn't want to be there.
There was never where nothing showed up. And then you also get afraid, what if I give a reading and people say they don't like it or it wasn't right or good? That happens so much less than what you fear. So again, you surrender. In readings,
Mhm.
people just show up and you don't know what you're getting. It happened so rare. Only once it wasn't a good, the energy was off. And I just gave her money back. Then I was like, why have I been afraid of that?
Oh,
But you have
so
to
freeing.
trust. It's still the scariest thing. I still give mediumship readings in the church when I'm in spiritualist churches and things like that. I do the public demonstration. It's still so terrifying.
Mm. It's awesome that you showed up and did it anyway and, followed where source was guiding you.
It helps you trust spirit for everything else. If you're going to be there for me in that, you're going to be there for me in everything else that I do.
Yes. Yes. For me, I've been really called to what I call expression magic. And I kind of laugh because, I developed this framework of the six sourced magics during COVID. And it was like people kept coming to me and saying, I think I'm being guided to do this. What do you think? And, we were like all on edge and trying to make sure we made good decisions and all of that. So I understood that, but it was also like an epidemic, right? Like they knew what to do, but they wanted me to say it's okay. And so I sat down, with my journal, with my post-it notes. I mapped out all the ways people had been telling me that they were getting messages for years and came up with this framework. And I kind of laugh because I think, did I do all this for me to understand that there's, expression magic and be invited into more of my psychic and channeling gifts? And I'm especially giggling now. When we started this call, my throat was like,
It was. I was thinking about that. Like, this is going to be a throat opening. I had years of some chronic stuff with my throat, and you were starting to choke up, and now it's gone away. It is. I
yeah,
was going to ask you if expression magic is channeling, because that's kind of my next
yes,
frontier. And I did go to England and do some trance channeling this year, which was amazing. And I've done channeling, and I'm called to do channeling in a bigger way when it's ready, when it
ooh,
shows
okay.
up.
Yeah, for me, here's how I'm holding it because I don't know, like I don't know what all gifts will open up, but what I know is recognition magic has been always my forefront, right? Where I make connections, people say things,
Yes.
I get a click of knowing like, oh, this you said that, like, oh, here's the pattern, right? And it's like been reliable for a very long
Yes.
time. And expression is very much like, I'm not even going to try to figure that out. You just ask me a question and whatever comes through, comes through. And then it's up to you
Just
to go
channeling it.
do what you want with it, right? And that's such a different way of working. And so, um, trusting that something will come through, or if it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's not a big deal. And letting go of the old way of working, right?
You're
Like kind of
bringing up a
setting that
great point,
aside.
because this is part of why you see I've had such a trajectory, but it all makes sense to me. It's very inconvenient for our business when we say we're this and this is how we work and you pay us. But really, at the meta level, this is all just our spiritual journey. And once you get comfortable with a way of working with spirit, and this happens even with inside of mediumship, it stops working and the other ones come in. So it's highly inconvenient if you're just trying to be about your business, but as a soul, that's what it's
Yes.
about.
Highly inconvenient is a good way to put it.
Yes, it's like, well, this always worked. And then my mentor, my mediumship mentor would say, and that's when it stops working, because you have to learn new ways to work with spirit.
Yeah, and then we brand ourselves in a
Yes.
particular way, right? And so then we feel trapped to show up as how we've worked so hard to brand ourselves.
I love
It's
you bringing that
interesting.
up too, because this is what I found also. I call it the personality branded business. So, where I saw the coaching model and applying that in the same way, my business for 16 years has had so many different evolutions. But when you use the model that you and I grew up in and were trained in, you brand yourself and your name, and then
Mm.
people stay with you on the journey. No one has ever said, oh, what is she doing now? That doesn't
Mm.
make sense. And all of a sudden, I was selling mediumship and I was a medium, and people stayed. And then they wanted the business coach in the medium. And it's because we brand ourselves as our name. I learned that early, thank goodness, by
Mm.
your mentors, my mentors, all of that. And it has served me forever. Nothing I do now will go outside of that brand,
Yeah,
and I
you're
can be
you.
and do any of it.
Amazing. You're you,
You're you,
period.
and you're always you. And I go on the journey, and in a few years, I may say, now I'm a trance channel. And people just go, okay, let's go here now.
I love it. I love that, Michelle. Thank you so much. I think this is going to be so valuable for people listening. Um, Tell me about Get What You Want Masterclass.
I wanted to teach these principles with the book coming out. If you haven't read the book yet, or just to get that one, two, three. And so I took three key principles and I made it into a webinar that's very easy to watch. And you can get that as a gift, the Get What You Want Masterclass. It goes well with the book. You can either be reading the book and then go through the masterclass, or you could do the masterclass first and see if you really like that, because some people want to say, well, where do I even start? So I tried to really chunk it down. And as I told you, the first place we're going to start is we're going to go back to your desires, your beliefs about your desires, and how to work with the universe and magic and your desires.
Yes. You know, one of the things I know about you from reading your Facebook posts is you really break it down and make it so simple and so accessible. But you challenge people to, not settle, to not kind of sit back and wait for life to happen, but to create it.
One of my earliest mentors, when you're trying to learn your message and all that, said, what keeps you up at night? And I hit it. What keeps me up at night is people not living a life they love. And the years just go by and their bodies are sick and their bank accounts and all these different areas of their life. And I wanted to prove, so I turned my life into an experiment, that I can have the life I want now and it'll support and sustain me.
And you're doing it.
Yes.
Awesome. So they can get the book, Loving What's Next, What You Want Can Be Yours Now, over on Amazon. And then we'll
Yes,
put the
and
link below to the Get What You Want Masterclass. Go ahead.
yes, it's on Amazon. An easy shortcut is lovingwhatsnextbook.com.
Oh, nice.
And then the Get What You Want Masterclass.com is my free gift.
Awesome. So, Michelle, I imagine this podcast hitting the ears of people I grew up in Minnesota in a small town. So, people like me, um, who maybe don't have magical people in their life. Maybe they're the one in their family breaking the mold. They wonder if they're crazy. They're not sure if they should really follow this spiritual path. What would you say to that person?
Just for even a short time, trust, to build that belief, to do the experiment and try it out and give yourself the time and see it's not so magical like out there. You can really make it practical and magical at the same time. So just start trying it out. It's about going back into yourself and what do you desire? And do you believe you can create that and have that now? And then you can do it your own way, because there are so many levels of ideology and theology and characters who are all about all this, from the practical to the totally out there, and find who you resonate with. It's one of the reasons I like to show up and talk about it in the way I do, to make it accessible.
Beautiful. I love that. Do it your own way and make it practical.
Because you're creating the life you want. So anybody who says, but then I won't be me or I won't live like I want, yes, you will. That's the only way it will work. You'll create the world that you want to be living in.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you, Michelle. This has been so fun. Thank you for saying yes to this invite, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you soon. All right.